here. And I know you all are, because there's so many things one can do on a beautiful day like this. But we've chosen to all come together so that we can discuss mental wellness in the family. For our guests and those that haven't been part of this group, this is the African Cancer Support Group. We believe that no one should do cancer alone. And we're just a group of cancer survivors. Some of us are still going through the process. Some people are caregivers, some are family members, but one way or the other, we've been touched or we're aware of how challenging dealing with cancer can be. And one of those things that we deal with, cancer can be so frightening, is also beyond the physical struggle of cancer. There are the mental aspects of it. And those mental aspects show up in many parts of it, in many parts of our family, of family life. And this is why we've gathered today. We brought in two professionals, which I will introduce in detail shortly. And we just want to have a conversation. We want to share stories. We want to listen. We want to discuss so that we can be equipped to handle mental wellness in our families so that we can be healthy, body, soul, and spirit. So welcome once again. That's really what the program is going to be about. And I'm going to run through the agenda just so you have a sense of how this is going to go. The program is scheduled to run for close to 2 hours, 1 hour, 45 minutes to be exact. And at the most, it will go on for 2 hours. But right now, once I'm done this welcoming and the opening statements that I'm making right now, Mr. Bayo Oladele will tell us more about this organization, what we do, the benefits of being a member, the history and what we hope to achieve, our mission and our vision. And then I'll go on to introduce our guest speakers today. They will be facilitating the bulk of what we're doing, the conversations about mental wellness in the family. And then, we will have those conversations. We'll break out into two groups to have more detailed exercises, just so that there's an interactive part of this. And then we're going to have a Q&A session, and that's when we'll have even more conversations. Whatever questions you have, we will be our experts will be fielding those questions, and then we'll begin to wrap up with announcements and closing remarks. So that's all we have lined up today. You're welcome once again. And with that, I'm going to pass this on to Mr. Bayo Oladele to tell us more about ACSG.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. My name again is Bayo Oladele, and I'm one of the organizers of the event today. I just want to, I'm not sure how many people are here who have not really been here before. Today is your first time joining us. I'm not sure, we have only about 8 participants now. So anyway, for the sake of those who are just joining us for the very first time, African Cancer Support Group is a non-profit organization. If you can go to the next slide, ma'am. It's, yes, then the next slide now. Good. So African Support, everybody can see this slide on the screen. So I'm just going to read through what we have. So African Cancer Support Group is one of the arms of one of the functions or the, what's going on? Thank you. So it's an organization under the Oladele Foundation, as you have just seen. And just not to waste your time, why do we have a ACSG? ACSG is essentially to help survivors and patients alike, to help them to cope with emotional trauma caused by cancer disease. We all know what, excuse me, what cancer does to people anyway. And what are the aims? Why are we doing it? To support survivors, patients, and caregivers, and to share stories, symptoms, information, and coping strategies. So again, we are a safe place to share information. What we meant by that is that whatever we discuss in here stays in here. So It's a place where you can discuss things that you cannot discuss elsewhere with anybody else. And why do we want people to join? Well, being a support group, we help ourselves to develop new skills, so that we can relate even with our condition and situation that is going on. Next slide, ma'am. Okay, so as I said, why do we need to join and who can attend? So you don't actually have to be a member to attend. Event like today is open to everybody. Well, today we only have very few people. Maybe other people are still going to be joining us. So ACS group is also designed for specific audiences, including Africans, Black individuals living with cancer, cancer survivors, cancer patients, caregivers, family members, and friends. And of course, anyone who is interested in learning more about cancer. So those are, it's open to everybody generally, essentially. That is what we are saying. So you don't have to have cancer to attend. Next slide, ma'am. Okay, and we made, so the event of today actually occurs every other month. In other words, we meet bi-monthly like this, where we bring professionals, we bring specialists, we bring doctors, we bring those who have in-depth knowledge about what is going on with cancer. We bring them like today. So every two months, we do that. So, and we engage them for about 2 hours to tell us what we need, what we are interested in to know about cancer. And of course, in between those two months, we have another bi-monthly week where members themselves now meet to discuss among themselves. This is an intimate one where, after we've gotten things from professionals, the following month we'll come together to discuss among ourselves, what is actually going on with individuals? How can we help ourselves other than what the professionals have talked about? So we have, it's for ACSG members only. We share and encourage each other. And the next such meeting will just be the next month, September 12th, will be the one that is going to be for ACSBG members only. Next month. Okay, that is all that I have to say about that. If anybody needs more information about ACSG, we can always provide it. We will be happy to provide any information that answer to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oladele. Thank you for introducing ACSG. And now we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is really what we've come here for. I'm really pleased to introduce Georgina Nwoke and Oluyinka Marcus. These two women are pillars in the African community in Calgary. And I know this because I have attended many events. I remember one I attended in which Mrs. Nwoke was giving just having tough conversations with women in the African community, and here again, she's shown up. We're talking about cancer and mental wellness. And so I'm thinking, what else does this woman do? So this is her bio here. I'm not going to read it word for word. What is impressive is that people have taken what they do for a living and they're giving it back to the community. This is not a paid event. This is just her time, using her time to make the lives of her community, of people in her community better. Mrs. Nwoke is a registered psychologist in Alberta, and she's a registered member of the Psychologists Association of Alberta, Canada, and she does provide psychology services. So beyond this, if you want to know well, you can engage her as a professional. She is a parent and a published author. And this is really, we're kind of lucky to have her here because her book is around parenting and we're talking about family, wellness in the family. I know this, and it's written here that she has a passion for supporting her clients heal from traumas and helping parents to raise children that are emotionally, mentally, and physically healthy. Thank you very much for joining us, Mrs. Georgina Nwoke. And now, thank you. And I want to introduce Mrs. Oluyinka Marcus. I have referred a number of people to this woman because I know that beyond what she does for a living, she's passionate about ensuring that there's healing and wellness and wholeness in families. And she's well known for this wisdom and the profession she practices. What's amazing about Mrs. Marcos, which is also the same with Mrs. Owoke, they're both pastors, and we know that wholeness is body, soul, and spirit. So beyond bringing their professional skill sets, she also brings, faith, right, which is really needed for hope. And some of the situations, what makes a difference is hope. Mrs. Oluyinka Marcos is a member of the Professional Association of Christian Counselors. She's a professional certified counselor. And I'm not going to read all of that because I'm sure I'm going to twist my tongue in calling out the name of this association. You can read it here. She owns her own counseling ministry of business, which is called Hope Alive Ministry in Calgary. She has a passion for healing, cleansing, and processing the hurts in the hearts by supporting individuals and their families to resolve personal and relational challenges. Yes. If you have there's all these conversations we get into, we don't have answers for people. Let me just tell you from my experience, just send them her way. These very complex situations where there's, just difficulties in marriage, and you just like, where do I even begin to unravel this? Mrs. Marcos can help out with that. Mrs. Marcos is a parent of 2 adult children. She actually co-authored a book with her daughter titled Walk With Me, A Journey Through Life, Hardships and Joy. And you would find her where the conferences and topics around emotional intelligence for adults and children, relationship abundant and healing from relational hurts, life satisfaction, emotions and spirituality, and having a unique perspective towards that. So with that, help me welcome these 2 amazing women. We're now going to step into the presentation proper. And I believe with this screen, we're probably going to have Georgina Owoke go first. So over to you, Mrs. Owoke. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having us today. I must say that it's a unique experience to be here, and I'm really very appreciative of what ACSG is doing. That means that there is hope for survivors and even patients and families of patients. So in today's presentation, I want us to know that a caution is out there. We are not offering counseling or therapy today. We are providing information. And with this information, you might find it very useful. And then after the presentation, if you need any support, please talk to the executives of ACSG, and they can make the appropriate referral for you. Okay, so today we are looking at trauma and healing journeys of caregivers and families for trauma. Now, today's objective is for us to be able to identify what is trauma, what is intergenerational trauma, and how does the trauma that we experience in life, at every stage in life, how does that impact our mental health? And what are the practical coping strategies for yourself and your families? And how can we heal from traumas? And then we talk about the God factor or spirituality in the healing process. So this is what we're going to cover today. Now, before we go into asking what is trauma, there are some reflections that we need to do. What are the common sources of trauma? Most times when we see ourselves, we are well-dressed, we wear our makeups, and then we assume everything is okay. So what are the common sources of trauma? How does trauma experienced in childhood and adulthood affect our adult lives? What are your own traumas? So as we listen today, I need us to reflect. We need to reflect on what our own personal traumas are and how are we traumatizing others, especially our family members, because of our own trauma that we carry. And then what are the strategies that we need to support ourselves and to support our families to heal from traumas? So that's a lot to talk about today. Now, trauma is any situation or event that causes us emotional, mental, or physical distress. And the memories won't go away, and those memories impact our daily functioning. Especially the COVID-19, that was a trauma because the government didn't have a solution. Nobody had a solution. And there was no notice. COVID just came to us right at the door. So that was very traumatic. There was a lot of deaths, and people are still dying. Even marriages are being lost. There are a lot of breakups because of COVID. Businesses that had been there for 100 years, a lot of them collapsed. Accident as well can be a source of trauma. Even cancer can be a source of trauma. Even going through that diagnosis And even if the diagnosis was false, waiting to get the correct diagnosis, that's a traumatizing period. And then going through the illness, recovering, all that is a very traumatic experience. And some people have lost their lives as well, which traumatizes even the family the more. Family of origin issues. A lot of us have been traumatized as children. You know, as a child, you have those emotional distress and you don't have a voice to express how you feel. Abuse in our relationships, all kinds of abuse, that can be traumatic. And then even messages from people, to us. Sometimes people give us messages that make us to be downcast and we don't talk about it. And there's what we call vicarious trauma. Vicarious trauma is when somebody we love or close to us is going through a trauma. Like if we have a family member who has cancer, of course, that trauma is passed down to the members of the family. So the people in the family are traumatized and it becomes a vicarious trauma. It's everyday life, even work. Sometimes a lot of us are traumatized at work, maybe because of racism or discrimination or that kind of, even bullying, that can be a trauma. Intergenerational trauma is when traumas are passed down from one generation to another. When we experience traumas as parents and we don't deal with it, and then we parent in anger, we parent in fear, and we parent with our traumas, we are traumatizing our children. And that brings a lot of mental health issues and traumas on our children as well. Okay, so how can we diagnose trauma? As a clinician or as clinicians, when we have patients in our clinics, how do we know that somebody, there's something that the patient will bring or the client will bring to you, a problem or an issue, and then that will ring a bell in your mind that there must be an underlying trauma. Then you start exploring trauma. There's what we call trauma type 1, especially if it's a single incident, maybe an accident, or maybe somebody dying, or maybe like the COVID. That's a trauma. But there's also what we call complex trauma, especially childhood traumas. A child is being abused perpetually, and then the child grows up experiencing those trauma. And then the trauma affects the brain development of that child. So that's what we call development traumas. And it becomes a disorder because it affects the personality of this child. It affects their coping mechanism. It affects us even as adults. And even though we experience it as a child. And then when somebody experiences trauma, how we know is that the person can experience some symptoms that we call post-traumatic stress disorder. And PTSD can come in form of vivid dreams and nightmares of those incidents, flashbacks, being hypervigilant, watching your back all the time, startle at every response, thinking that the trauma is basically reliving the trauma. And then that person also showing avoidance behaviors, just to numb the pain, avoiding triggers, what I call PPT, people, places, and things that bring up those memories, and the person tends to avoid them. Somebody losing interest in things they used to enjoy before, anxiety, depression. There are a lot of associated mental health issues that comes with PTSD. And I want us to know today that every trauma is an individual experience. Most times you hear people that say, oh, is it just that thing that upsets you? Most times culturally, we tend to compare people's traumas and then we tend to minimize. We tend to feel that this trauma is bigger than the other. No, every trauma is an individual experience and we don't need to minimize that. Because when we minimize it, we are traumatizing the person. Now, what are the symptoms? Physically, that can lead to what we call somatization. Soma is body. So we discovered that can cause body pains, body aches, back aches, joint pains, and that person can be hypersensitive to touch, especially somebody has experienced sexual abuse as a trauma. We discovered that when that person gets married, intimacy will be a problem for the person and in the relationship. Increased medical issues, headaches, depression, body pain, everything. That can affect even the organs as well. That can actually also lead to cancer. Sense of self-worth, low self-esteem, shame and guilt. And then even poor emotional regulations. That person might be lashing out at even the smallest thing because that person has been traumatized and the person is carrying a lot of this trauma and numbing the pain inside. And when we numb the pain and we carry it inside, it becomes toxic. And that can actually lead to one infection or the other. And then attachment can be an issue because that person may not be able to rely on family members because there's a sense of distrust because of trauma. Even if our thinking patterns are, there's a reduced capacity to function both mentally and even physically. Now, so So you discover that even in our relationship, because of the trauma that we carry inside, which is toxic, we can begin to use our family members as emotional punching bag. You know, we lash out at them, we get angry when when the issue at hand does not warrant anybody getting angry, we lash out even at the smallest things, and then we parent in anger, and then our children don't understand what is going on. And then you discover that someone who has experienced trauma might be wanting to fix other people, you know, because if I fix him, he won't traumatize me. Okay, and then that person might also be abusing substances, you know, watching pornography, getting into addiction, alcohol and substance abuse, because they want to numb the pain that comes from the trauma. Unhealthy communications, being aggressive or passive aggressive, being busy. Sometimes you see people, they work night shift, from there they go to day shift because they're avoiding to relax so that their emotions don't come up. And then the more they do all these activities, the more they numb the pain, and the more it becomes toxic in our organs and in our bodies. Running and avoidance behaviors. Running, you cannot be in a group where you can relax or people can talk about a few things. The person continues to isolate and run. Dissociation, that means disconnecting from our inner self, and then we stop feeling. Sometimes as well, when somebody comes to the clinic and say, "Oh, Georgina, I don't know what's happening. I think I don't remember stuff anymore." It's like my memory. I'm struggling with my memory. I don't focus on the memory. I focus on trauma, because usually loss of memories and it is people unconsciously. That's a coping mechanism, because you stuff everything away, put it in a box and lock it away. And before you know it, the person starts losing their memory. Okay. Now, how does trauma impact our lives? I've talked about the impact on brain development. Neuroscience has told us that once a child experiences trauma, it impacts the development of their brain. And trauma destroys the core of who you are. Let's say if you're a very bubbling person, very energetic.
I think we lost.
We lost her.
I think we lost her.
Okay.
Maybe we give it a minute or so.
Okay.
I bet she'll probably join us again.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you, Mrs. Marcos, it's the same slide, right? So there's a point you take over, right?
Yes.
So she just has a few more slides. If she doesn't join us in the next minute or two, we might just skip her slides. And we
I will continue. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. This has been most informative, so I really pray she comes back.
Yeah. She probably lost the internet.
Oh.
Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Oh, she's gone again.
Okay.
Well, before is she back?
No, she's not. We still have another 25 minutes.
Yeah.
This session to be over. I'll just say 20 minutes. Will that be sufficient for you though?
Yeah, well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, so maybe let's do this. We waited a minute. Let's just skip the next, I think, 2 slides she's got.
Yeah.
Is that where you begin? Hero? No?
No.
No? Okay, so let's keep moving.
I think, let me just go back to the reflective question for everyone.
Okay.
That is slide 5.
Mm-hmm. There.
Yeah, and just to bring us back to what she was talking about, childhood trauma.
You're muted. Can you please unmute? There we go. You're good now.
Did that? Okay. All right. So I was saying that when we look at the reflective questions, the questions 3 and 4 there, as you listen to all this today, look at your own traumas, like your childhood traumas, things that you were unpleasant when you were growing up, even if you thought that, if you think that, oh, it doesn't matter, it's a small thing, it's a minimal thing, it's not like a big, issue, or like a tsunami wiped out my whole family kind of trauma, which is very traumatic. But sometimes we look at trauma as very harsh things that happen. It could just be times when your parents were really harsh on you and all that, and also punishing us unnecessarily or without even without doing what they said we did. There are some punishments there. See how those things are coming back now in terms of how you are seeing yourself, how you are relating with your own children, how you're relating with people around you, how you're relating with friends, and see if you can connect that back to how your parents, teachers, or classmates related to you. So when we come back to the discussion time, anybody can share that. And also how you are traumatizing other people because of your own traumas. Think about it now. Even in the situation we're in right now, how did my time of treatment affect my family, and am I traumatizing them with my trauma? And it's really possible. But at the same time, we need what we need when we go through these things. And also boundaries are very important too, in terms of how we relate with other people with our own traumas. So I think she's back now. She can continue. Is she back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, good.
Sorry, everyone, I apologize. This technology thing, I don't know what happened. My system just went off. Okay, so we are looking at impacts of trauma on our lives and the lives of our family members. And like I said, trauma impacts our mental health issues, and it also impacts the way we see the world, because our perspective becomes twisted because of the trauma that we have experienced.
Okay.
Now, next slide, please. Okay, now, what roles does family of origin play in traumas? Like I talked about a child, children, when we experience trauma, what happens? Things like even parental inconsistency. We say one thing, we do another thing. It's a trauma to kids. Sometimes things happen in the family and we tell the kids not to talk about it. It's traumatizing. Or we criticize our children all the time. Even when they do the smallest good thing, we don't compliment them. That's a trauma. Or we have unrealistic expectations. We have a long list of things that we want the kids to do. And some of those things we couldn't achieve by ourselves. We try to live our dreams through our kids. That's traumatic for them. We do things that make them not to trust us, or we lie to them. That's a trauma. And sometimes as parents, we create a very unhealthy competition in the family. We compare our kids and say, can't you be like your sister? Can't you be like your brother? Living in denial, those are traumas. And these are what we call family themes, because as children grow, they get used to what they know their family for. Some people, their families are known for keeping malice. Some people, their families are known for being jealous, what we call sibling jealousy. So these are all traumas, and children grow with this, and it impacts the core of who they are. The next slide. Yeah, so when this happens, you discover that when there's this trauma in the family because of dysfunction, children take on roles to be able to cope with what is going on. Most times the first child, or maybe that child that the parents perceive that is doing well, better than others, the parent now try to use that child to kind of, the success in that child to cover up for the lapses in the family. And this hero child, most of the time, would be the first child. This child is, of good behavior, successful. This is that child that even when there's an issue in the family, the child will cover up and still try to make straight A's. most times this child will become a parent at a very early age, because this child, he or she will not step into the role of the dad or the mom to look after the younger ones. So you discover that even when this child grows and becomes an adult, has his or her own family, he's also feeling obliged to also look after the families of the younger ones. And that's a trauma for that child, because that child never gets time to be a child. Next slide. And then we have the one that we call lost child. This is that child that appears to be invisible. This is that child that you don't have to worry about this child. This child is lonely all the time. And this child feels that nobody cares about me. This is that child that even when this child hasn't eaten, nobody will notice. And that's the one that we call the lost child, because that's the only way that the child copes with what is happening. And then we have the one that we call the scapegoat. This is that child that causes problem, is perceived to cause problem in the family. This is that child that the parents will always get calls from school, saying that this child is bullying other people and everything, negative reports all the time, fighting and all that, because this is the only way that this child can cope with what is going on in the family. So this child receives bullets from all over the family and all that. And then the child feels that nobody likes me and all that. So this child tries to create a family outside his or her family. And those ones, she or he will begin to see the friends as family members. Now, we also have the one we call the mascot. This is the comic relief in the family, the one that creates fun, the one that will laugh off everything. And I want you to know that sometimes, if it's in a family where you have 1 or 2 kids, you discover that children can take multiple roles. A child can be a hero, and after some time gets tired of being a hero, and then becomes the scapegoat and begin to cause problems. So all these roles can also be in one person if it's a family that has just one child. Okay, now how does all this impact who we are? This is an example of how trauma changes the core of who we are. When a child is born, you discover that the child is innocent. I want to let us know that every child is a good kid. The child is playful, the child is happy, the child can laugh, giggle, honest, feel safe with the family, and is mentally stable and connected with people in the family. And the child can hug everybody, hug all the aunties and all the uncles. But when there's a trauma, when the child experiences a trauma, this child becomes withdrawn. You can see how the red arrow is moving. The child becomes withdrawn, can't play anymore, sad most of the time, feeling unloved, and this child has no voice. And the child is feeling fearful and scared and, unprotected. And sometimes you can discover that this child might eat too much or eat very little. So this child will now become angry because those emotions are not expressed, they are stuffed in. And even if we experience trauma as adults, we also go through this process, crying, hurting, feeling stolen, feeling violated, feeling unprotected. And do you know that most times when children are brought to the clinic because they bed wet, that is, they wet their beds at night, we don't look at the bed wetting, we go on the line underneath and then look at trauma, because that's an evidence of trauma. So now, if somebody has been violated, discover that all these negative emotions in the middle will all be stuffed inside, and it becomes toxic to the body. If it's a child, it affects the brain development of that child. And then when that child grows up, the child has mastered to be able to numb all the pain, act it out. That's why you see a lot of people will lash out in anger. We become perfectionists. We want to fix the weather. We want to even fix the oxygen that we breathe because we don't want to relax. Okay, we become disconnected, and some children even adults get into sexual misbehaviors. Some people get into addictions, and then a lot of mental health issues, depression, anxiety, and a lot of stress. And that's when the post-traumatic stress disorder shows forth. And that's why you see some young adults, they don't want to marry because they've been traumatized. And because the PTSD, the symptoms are still showing up, the flashbacks and everything, the pain is still there. And that's why you see some people as well, they have personality disorders, because that's how they've learned to cope with their trauma. And then we run, and then we try to, we can't get help because we are trying to avoid all that. Then how can we heal from here? We have to heal by walking back from here and walking back to the position, to that place we started, that position of that innocent child, where that natural little child learning to play. You can see the green arrow. So we're expected to walk back to be able to heal. And as clinicians, that's our role, to help the patients to walk back to begin to heal, to start learning to play and to even be a child. in heart. And when we experience trauma, you can see the disconnection here. This is the adult self, and this is that little child. That little child still lives inside of us, but that little child is so disconnected from feeling her emotions because she's emburdened with all these toxic emotions. And this is one of the things that can lead to, physical ill health, even to cancer. Let's go to the next slide. So what are the triggers? Triggers are something that we have to know when we talk about traumas. Triggers are those things that bring up those memories, people, places, and things. Sometimes it can be somebody's tone of voice. It can be somebody's body language. Sometimes it can be color. If somebody was traumatized by somebody wearing a red shirt, you discover that red color anywhere can remind the person of those memories. Sometimes even food. Let's say the day that somebody was abused, that person ate maybe rice. You discover that rice may be a trigger. Places, locations. Sometimes most times when people have accidents, they have this phobia to drive through that route again. They can't, except they do treatment. Even smell, color, sound, activity. So the responsibility is on us to identify what our triggers are and then be able to get the support that we need to start healing from our traumas. So at this point, I'm going to allow Yinka Marcus to take over to begin to look at the healing part.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Am I okay?
Yes.
Okay. So now we have identified the trauma definition, what causes it, what could cause it, what could result in it, and all the triggers and all the ways that they happen, especially within the family. So now let's look at how we heal from it. First of all of this is about the trauma circumstance. Let's say a trauma happened, or a trauma is usually, it usually brings a trigger, right? I mean, it's an imprint. It imprints emotional and physical sensation. So every trauma would imprint that into your mind or your body or your brain, your whole being. It could be an imprinting of some emotional, physical sensation. And of course, we don't deal with them. We just create coping mechanism and we leave it there. Like I said earlier, when there's childhood trauma, that's what happens with children. We just leave it there. We don't do anything. We don't address them. So now what happens as an adult, as Georgina was saying, is that those things, when a similar thing happens, then it just reacts to the original imprinting of the emotional and physical sensation that was already there. So what happens with that is that the way you have always treated a trauma is the way you might treat it when it happens in your adulthood. So addressing trauma is more than telling the story. We say, yeah, you need to talk about it, and it's true. We talk about it. We do the work though, because and that's why it's good to go for counseling and address those things. Look at the sources of the trauma, especially if it's a family member of yours, you can help them look. But if it's you too, go for counseling, because processing it will help to retrieve all those things that's happened and help the brain to unlearn the coping mechanism that you have already been used to, and it will also be able to rewire your brain. You know, the brain has less elastic in it, where it's possible that the brain will heal itself, especially when you now use a different coping mechanism, a different healing, a different way of coping with the trauma. When you have done that, your brain rewires and you begin to learn new tools so that you can act in different ways. So we say that it's beyond telling the story. It's about all those destructive reactions that we have developed in our emotions and in our physical sensations, which the trauma the original trauma had imprinted in our brain. So the brain is a big part of trauma, and we sometimes may need medication to help with that, because what happens with this trauma is that it may become psychotic. It can have psychotic effects where you may begin to see things or hear voices if not well dealt with. So healthy family support is true that we need our family to support us in our traumas, and there are very healthy ways to have that happen. The hope is that all of us that's here, we have family support, and if you're a family member here too, who have family members who are suffering maybe from the impact of cancer and its treatment, hopefully you are healthily supporting your family member. So we need that to have that meeting, being honest with our family members, and being honest too if you're a caregiver, being honest that, okay, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed now with what you're saying. Can we postpone? Can we do it later, or anything that will help the honesty back and forth on both sides. Connect with other support groups. Family is good, but sometimes friends are great too, to have that healthy support from them. We need that emotional safety at home where, yes, you don't want people to walk on eggshells around you. At the same time, you need them to know that you are also trying to cope with things. Being assertive, part of honesty, being assertive about what is going on and what you really want in the relationship. You can tell someone, I just need you to listen. I don't need advice or suggestion, just to listen and let me just pour it out. And that's where we talk about boundaries too. Sometimes emotional boundaries are important on both sides. If you're a caregiver, you can also be honest that, okay, you know what, each time we talk, let's limit it to an hour. I know you need to talk it out, but then again, I also need to protect my own emotional state. So both groups, both caregivers and the traumatized need to be able to have that understanding and do those boundaries together. So the next slide is self-care. Self-care for family caregivers. And like I was saying, it's very good to have that boundary. At the same time, be a listening ear for the person who needs it. At the same time, you need your own self-care. When people go through trauma, it's important to look at the messages to affirm yourself and say, okay, I can do this. I am not the cancer. Cancer came to my body, but I am not the cancer. So who am I? And you begin to affirm yourself that you can do this, that you have the strength, and the strength will come eventually, and you can overcome it. Self-care is also part of self-care with childhood trauma is reparenting yourself. When we mean that when things happen in the past or even in the present, and your parents are still doing what they're doing, you may need to learn the healthier way of parenting, whether it's through your counselor or your therapist or friends, and they tell you, okay, these are the better ways to parent, and you try to imbibe those and learn those, and also release your parents in forgiveness. So sleeping well, try to learn how to have healthy sleeping habits. Sleep when you need to sleep, sleep earlier, be mindful. Deep breathing helps a lot to sleep. Be conscious of what you eat, shower, do all the good things that your body needs. changing what you you can control. It's important to not try to do what you can't do, or try to control what you can't, in terms of, okay, what is going on with them? You don't know. So it's good to ask. If you're a caregiver, ask questions. How can I help? Don't assume that you know how to help. Listen to your own core values as a caregiver, and then journal daily. Journal how you're feeling, how the thing is affecting you. Journal and write, and then draw conclusion at the end. Journaling is a great tool, but if you just put down all your toxic experience, and you are not coming to some positive things at the end, you will just continue in that negativity. So when you're journaling, come to a conclusion that is more positive. All of these things are things that you can learn from therapy. Next is, so we talk about being relaxed and try to find a place or whatever it is that helps you to relax. Like we're talking about breathing exercises. You don't have to be doing everything at every time. Give yourself permission to relax. You can do nothing. You can put your feet up. Don't feel guilty when you do that. Whether you're a caregiver or you're someone who is traumatized. Like we said, find your support system and try to work with that. Now, let's look at spirituality. I don't know if all of us here are Christians or Muslims or whatever your spirituality is. There is impact of spirituality in healing from trauma through prayers and the word. Listen to the word, visit your imam or your pastor or whoever you want support from spiritually. Daily meditation on the word. Cultivate a time with Holy Spirit. Learn to hear and listen to the voice of the Lord. Affirmations from the word, and go and be of service to someone else too is part of healing. Random acts of kindness is one of the things that actually keep people in happiness, happy mood. You will be happier if you're doing kindness to others, even in the midst of it. Gratitude. I've learned that gratitude journals are very, very important in healing. Just being grateful for everything, the air you breathe in, the food you eat, the roof over your head, all those things that we think they are little, they are great when we remember them and we put them in the forefront of our hearts. So take authority over any stronghold on your mind, anything that wants to keep you down. You take authority as Christ gives us as a Christian. There are ways to do that and ask the Lord for help in that. So we talked about core values, be intentional, worship the Lord, worship. As Christians, if you're a Christian here, worship is a big thing to help with healing from trauma. Okay, so but before we go on to that, I just want to quickly give a personal thing from my own experience with breast cancer. I know that from going for the tests and waiting for the tests and what I call the bad news effect, and how the questions begin to come. How do I tell people? What do I say? How does this mean? What does this mean for me and my family? Am I going to die? Those are the things that comes always in our minds, especially when you're going for your treatment and things are not falling into place. The first thing or maybe the last thing for some is death. Thinking about death. And so, but when we look at all these things that we're talking about, especially the spiritual part of it is about hope. And we want to release that hope that God is bringing us to walk in hope and know that, yes, we can live and to proclaim and glorify the Lord. We know a lot of us know how many people who have died through this the cancer treatments and all that. But then again, God has a plan for everyone, and everyone's situation is different. So who will be the first person you will tell? That's another question. Where will you get all the help that you need? Thank God for what we have here with this group. It's a great group that is a support group that helps with cancer, and I'm very grateful to God that the Cancer Society of Canada or of Alberta is really doing a great job in this. And thank you to Bayo and Yinka for spearheading this in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm just looking for my reactions here. I want to clap, I want to celebrate, I want to, this was just been so informative. Most of the time we are going through post-traumatic stress, and we don't even know that's what it is. And sometimes the beginning is even understanding that, wow, that was trauma, and this is the ways I've been coping with it. So thank you very much for that information. So now we're going to go into breakout sessions. We're going to do that for 15 minutes, so till about 10 past the hour. And then we're going to have questions and answers for about 20 minutes after that. That will take us to 5:30. So the way this is going to be done is we're randomly going to be put into two groups. There's nothing you have to do. There's about 12 of us on this call, so there'll be 6 in a group, and we'll have a facilitator in each group just guiding us through, just taking this to the next level. And then we can all come back together and ask more questions so that our understanding of what we learned today is solidified. So with that, I'm going to just let our host.
I lost her. Hello?
She's still on, but she's not.
She's assigning the groups, I think.
Oh, okay. So, Georgina, do you take group 1 or 2?
Anyone, anywhere I find myself.
I put you in group 1, Pastor Yinka, and
Okay.
I put Pastor Georgina in group 2.
Okay, thank you.
I'm opening it up right now.
Okay.
Which room do you want to go to?
It doesn't matter. Sorry, I got kicked out.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Mrs. Yvonne, I'm going to assign you to group. I'm going to assign you to group one. Hi, Giorgio. I'm going to assign you to, can you mute one of your phone? Can you mute yourself? Then I'll assign you to one of the rooms. Is that it?
We still have some more breakout rooms, right? I think people in my breakout room are still there in their room. Okay.
Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the discussion in the breakout rooms. I know we had different scenarios, and we had just about enough time to, in my room, each share our opinions, but I think this is a good time to almost like get closure on each of these cases. You know, we all shared our opinion on what each of the case studies characters should do, but I would really like to hear from the experts, right? You wrote these case studies. I know that life does not have one answer, right? But we're hoping that in this time, while we gather questions and answers, if you have questions, I want to just suggest either you just speak up or you type your questions. And in this question and answer time, we have about, right now we have about 15 minutes to go through this. Please just, ask your questions. It could be about the case studies, it could be about your situation, but I was just wondering, Ms. Nwoke, are you on the call? Can you speak to that case study we had? What's the professional answer? What should Ms. Farrow do? Well,
okay. That case study is a very real life case study, actually, and that's a huge trauma, and that shows you that even everywhere we go, there can be trauma everywhere staring us on the face. That's a huge trauma staring that person at work, because there's a lot of mental health issues now that is associated with it. She might be having some flashbacks. She's not sleeping well, so she must have developed insomnia. She's having anxiety. She's feeling sad about her work. Can we mute Giorgio, please? Because
she's muted.
Okay. So there's a lot of mental health issues, and that shows you the impact of trauma. And like we agreed in our group, she needs to speak up. And if nothing is done about it, she needs to start looking for another job, because health first. Because if you don't have your health back, there's no way we can do other things in life. We don't have to have that toxic relationship or toxic emotions, that is weighing us down, because it affects our physical health.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. There was another case study that I didn't get to experience, but I'm sure Mrs. Marcos can speak to that. Can you tell us a bit about that and what you think the answer to that is?
Okay, so there's a girl who was sexually abused by the driver in the family, and she was told that if she tells her parents, she will be killed. They will be killed, and so she kept it in. And of course, her parents noticed that there's a change in her, and all they were doing was take her to church for casting out demons and stuff like that. And her mother will also kind of call her names, and each time she's not complying to instructions, and she's always fighting with her siblings and getting angry. And so this went on until she was 5. So the question was, you know, where were her traumas and all that? And now she's married. It's how would it impact our relationship? So we talked around that, and we identified some traumas: betrayal, abandonment, sexual abuse, of course, lack of trust from on her part. And as an adult, as an adult, she would have some trust issues, bonding issues, even with her parents and with anybody else. Maybe she would have sex issues where her sexuality will be a problem. She wouldn't know how to deal with her sexuality. It may, when she's married, she may not be able to sexually engage with her husband well, and she may develop some sexual problems too in her adulthood. And the way to heal, of course, we identify that is to, first of all, begin to develop trust in people, and then talk to people, talk to professionals, and begin to heal from there.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And that use case is actually more common than most people will, know, and it's a really good one. Thanks for sharing that. I have a slide here I'm hoping to share, but in the meantime, if you have any questions, can you speak up right now? We have about another 10 minutes, any questions about what we've learned today, the use cases? I see a question here from Kayla. She's like, it's actually Giorgio saying that, how can I sign up for the next month? And so what it is we have your information. If you're interested in this, we can send you an invite for the next event we have. Or if you want to be a member of this group, there is a membership form. We'll send you some information about that. So thanks for that question. Ms. Abea, can you please enable screen sharing? I just want to share this takeaway slide. I've got a question while we're waiting for other questions to come in. In one of the slides, you mentioned triggers, right? And everyone has their triggers. How can people heal from triggers? Is there a way to manage triggers? Like, you might know what your trigger is, but what do you do about it?
And if I may take that, that's where that's where counseling or therapy comes in. Because going to therapy is about the clinician supporting you to be able to manage your triggers. Sometimes the person let's say if it's a road accident and the person is triggered by driving or by going through that route again, one of the therapy might be what we call exposure therapy, where the patient is taken through that route, or somebody sits inside a car and then she or he drives the car to be able to support him or her. And then once you expose her through those triggers, then as she or he will continue to get stronger. So that's what therapy does to be able to manage the triggers, because everything we see around us is a trigger. Tone of voice of somebody's color of shirt can be a trigger. So it's about getting that person to come to that place of sense of safety, understanding that these are not the people that traumatize you, it's just that these are reminding you of memories.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. There's another interesting, I have the slide. I don't know if you all can see it. I think I'm sharing it. Yes. Forgiveness, because most of the time, trauma is caused by humans, right? Even if it's an accident, someone did something, right? So is forgiveness necessary for overcoming trauma? And if it is, what tips do you have for that?
Yinka, do you want to say something about that?
Okay, I can take that one. Forgiveness is a tool. At the same time, it's as Christians, we know that we have been called into forgiveness. However, forgiveness is not the first thing, because as Christians, we think, okay, somebody does something, then the first thing is to forgive. It's good to forgive, but we need to also process what went on, what happened. And so forgiveness also has been said described as something that you do for yourself, not for everybody else, not for the offender, really. It's not also to get the offender off the hook. It's just for your own healing. Forgiveness is what you do when you're ready to heal. Some people say, I can never forgive. Well, it's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die. That's one way that somebody has described that. So forgiveness is very key to healing trauma. Of course, like I said, at the same time, we need to process what happened, who did what, how it affected us, and also how to forgive the person and forgive ourselves. Because if we don't forgive ourselves for whatever it is, we need to identify what to forgive them for, and then identify what we need to forgive ourselves for however we contributed to that incident. So forgiveness, yes, it's a big part of healing from trauma.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Still waiting for questions. Anyone speak up? Otherwise, I'm always full of questions. I've got another one. Okay, I'm going to throw another question here. I noticed the question, how am I traumatizing others, especially my family? I remember reading a book a long time ago that hurt people, right? Can you speak about that? Just shed some light around that and what we can do. We usually don't want to hurt others, but if we're not healed, sometimes we do. So can you please shed some light on that?
Usually when we experience trauma, we naturally develop some coping mechanisms, and most of those coping mechanisms might be unhealthy. You know, like let's say somebody experiences trauma and then the person is hurt inside, and then those hurts and inner pains, which are toxic, now comes out in form of anger and lashing out. And sometimes the person affected may not even know why they are lashing out. I know most times when we lash out at our family members, at our husbands, at our wives, at our girlfriends and boyfriends, at our children, right? So that's why you see some parents parenting in anger. Sometimes they don't have a clue where the anger is coming out from. So that's why people need to get help, so that we don't use our family members and friends as emotional punching bag.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I've got one final question. I think we have 3 or 4 minutes to go for this section to end. Can you share with us a good news story? I know you have so many patients you've seen. People come through trauma, heal, and now they're healthy, just to give us hope, right? Sometimes when you can't even share your trauma and you're still trying to process, was that trauma or not? But can you share a story that will make this come alive to us?
Well,
you want to go?
Yeah. Well, since we're here with the cancer group, and this is what we are kind of trying to address, I can quickly share not somebody else's, but my own story of trauma. My mother died when I was 5, and that was a big trauma for a child at 5 years old living in Nigeria. And what happened with that is that, of course, you start to have many mothers around, and you called everybody mom. We called everybody mother. So at 5, there was nobody asked me how I felt about that. And of course, they say children are to be seen and not heard, and nobody was there to help with the traumatic event. And so that trauma was kept in for so long. And so through school, through university, through everything, it was hard to develop friendship, because what the trauma developed in me was nobody likes me, nobody cares, nobody would put me first. Nobody would comfort me, because there was always that thing about comfort that I never had, you know. And so the comfort, I was looking for comfort everywhere and not finding any. Even when I found the comfort, it was like it wasn't happening, and they had to do more. People had to do more for me than they are able to. And so when they're not able to, that just confirms that what I had, that nobody can ever comfort me. I would never be comforted. And so I had many issues around that, where the trigger, it was just triggering every time there was a relationship, and I didn't find comfort in anything or with anyone. And so that continued. I got married, and, you know, things happened. And of course, I didn't know how to love, and, you know, all of that. And so it happened that I started to recognize this thing in my life. And I knew that I can't put people in the place where they need to be my comfort. God is my comfort, first of all. And so I went to counseling. And what counseling did for me was phenomenal, because then I started to see all my triggers. I started to see, okay, this is a trigger right here. When I see someone that looked like my mom, I want them to be my friend. I want them to be my mom, so to speak. And they wouldn't be able to, because I have decided that nobody would ever be able to comfort me. So there are a lot of triggers from that trauma. And so when the cancer thing happened, of course, it was another thing that says you will never be comforted, right? So I had to go for counseling again during the treatment. So I had my own therapist, who is also a prayer minister, who would pray, would prophesy, would talk, will do all kinds of things over me. And so now I know I can freely cry if I need to. And I can also freely release people, and not expecting so much that people from people what they cannot give me. So eventually, when we talk about the impact of spirituality on healing of trauma, I've witnessed that in my life, and I've witnessed that in my circumstance, where I know that God is my ultimate. So even with my own business as a counselor, or my ministry, I've developed some things that I know that people can use to overcome these kinds of things. Because when things happen, when negative things happen in our lives, we need to first of all go to God, acknowledge it to God, acknowledge to God that this happened, acknowledge the pain and the hurt and the everything, acknowledge to God, because God wants us to come to him with everything that we're experiencing. And then we ask Holy Spirit for comfort. He is the comforter. So before we tell somebody else and somebody else and somebody else, we go to God first. Ask Holy Spirit for that comfort, and then we can start to forgive. From that place of comfort and healing from Holy Spirit, we start to forgive the person, and then we repent of our own part, the part we played in allowing that thing to happen in our lives. And then we ask God what to do, because God is able to tell us how to do things, how to pray things through by the power of the Holy Spirit. If you're a Christian here, yeah, that's what we do. But you can ask your spiritual leaders what to do if you're not a Christian. But I'm at this point just talking about Christianity, because that is where I function from. And so when we ask God what to do, he will tell us and we will do it. Sometimes God will say, pray for them. Sometimes he will give us a word that we can speak into the situation. Or sometimes he will say, go and talk to that person and release that person one-on-one and talk. So rather than tell A, B, C, D, E people, God is the first. And then sometimes it is, most of the time it's good to process the whole thing with someone else who is trustworthy and of course a professional.
Thank you very much. There's nothing that's powerful as a personal story. So thank you for sharing your own story. And I think I've changed that mantra to hurt people, heal people, because that explains the passion you have.
When they are healed, yeah.
Then they're healed. Hurt people can heal people because they have empathy. They understand. Being through that themselves, they can lead the way. So thank you very much for sharing that story.
So sorry, ma'am. Before you, can I ask a quick question before you close,
Sure.
please?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So to the presenters, I just want to know. Maybe I didn't get it clearly when you were speaking. So most of us, or some of us in here, have gone through the challenge of cancer. So we could say that cancer in a way is very traumatic. What way, what advice do you have for us on how to deal with the trauma of cancer? There are so many facets of things that come along with cancer treatment. I tell people occasionally, that most times cancer itself doesn't kill people. What kills people are what they call complications here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, we went through a lot of pain. We went through a lot of nightmares. Some people did. Some people went through pain. Some people went through series of other things that we cannot even imagine. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with the outcome of that? I mean, how do we translate that one? Now that some of us are getting healed, some of us are becoming survivors, but there are some PTSD that follows that even when we have been healed and become survivors. Mm-hmm. How do we deal with it?
Right. So when I talk to cancer survivors or patients in my office, or when they come, first of all, sharing my own story would be really helpful. The PTSD that comes afterwards is because of unaddressed trauma of that situation. Like I said, it's good to start with someone from the beginning of their diagnosis, because when there's a diagnosis, there's a time when the person is going for the test. You go for the test, that's already traumatic. You're waiting for the result, that's traumatic. The bad news impact, the day when they told you, whether it's by phone or by one-to-one, is very traumatic. The thoughts and the thinking about it and how to tell your friends and family members is very traumatic. What it means for you and your family, maybe as a woman or as a wife, you're the one cooking, cleaning, doing everything in the house. So what happens when you're not able to do all that? Is there a husband there? Are there children there who can help or who can do all those things? And the ultimate thought of death is one big thing in that. So all these things are they're compounding situations that can result in PTSD. So now the one of the ways, and there are many tools that you can get when you go for counseling, and that's why counseling is very important. There are many things that you can do with PTSD. One of them is what we talked about, journaling every day. Daily journaling cannot be stressed enough for PTSD healing, because when you will be taken through the best way, the healthy way to journal, because journaling includes all that, how I'm sleeping, how I'm doing self-care, my gratitude in life, and all those things, because PTSD has a lot to do with the brain, and your mind connects to your brain. And when your mind is all frazzled up, your brain will align with it, because it's whatever you're thinking and your thoughts, like you said, it's not the cancer that actually kills, it's how we respond to it. And of course, the cancer kills too somehow, because when it's very invasive, when it has invaded the whole being, although there's also the power of gratitude, the power of positive thinking, and all of those can actually remove cancer from your body. And so all these things, journaling, writing things down, self-care, good self-care, mindfulness, deep breathing, being intentional about what you eat, what you drink, how you take care of yourself and your hygiene, and all the being positive are all ways to overcome PTSD. So we don't really have to come into PTSD, but if we come into it, then those are the ways to address it, because it's just the symptoms that we experience after the trauma, right? The nightmares, you're having nightmares. So what do you do with nightmares? You journal, write out what is happening in your nightmares. What do those things represent? And these are things that counseling will do for you as you attend, as you go for it. So it's good too, because PTSD can also have more comorbid experiences where you can become depressed or have panic attacks, and a lot of other things can happen. Anxiety disorder can happen from that too. So my take on that is see a professional and add all these things to it.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Olade, thank you for that question. It's a trauma we all share in this group. So thank you for bringing that home and for the very comprehensive answer you provided there, Ms. Marcus. Sergio, Gina, can you help conclude this before we get into announcement? I know we still have 2 slides. I think your references on this one. Do you want to just give us some parting remarks before we wrap this up?
Actually, the truth is that we all experience traumas, and traumas are very diverse, and trauma is an individual experience. And when we have a family member who is experiencing trauma of cancer or trauma waiting for diagnosis result, we don't need to minimize that. So we need to support one another and also direct that person to get support, because that's why we have people in our lives, because supporting one another is very healthy. You might just be sitting down to listen to that person. You might be saying, hey, I believe that God can do it. I'm praying for you. You're going to pull through. These signs may be there, but that's not what the word tells us. That's not what we believe. I believe you're going to make it. I believe you're going to be alive. I believe you're not going to die. Those positive thoughts and those positive words of encouragement and verbalizing the support that we're giving to that person actually helps. Sometimes it might even be just sending a bowl of soup to that person. Sometimes it might just be hanging out with that person. Something you might think that this is too small, but there is need for us to support one another through our traumas and through whatever stages that the person finds themselves.
That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do you want to share your references with us?
That's fine, yeah.
That's okay. Okay. So we're just getting to the end of this. I have a few announcements, and then Ms. Aladele will wrap up with closing remarks. So for those who were here previous months, we had a session with Dr. Stewart. She is a massage and acupuncture professional. And so this announcement is just that for members of this group, we have a discount with her. There's a 20% discount that applies for the month of August. And ACSG, this group will support 50% of that payment too. So if you're interested in getting acupuncture and massage, just reach out. That's the email address and the phone number, or just send a note to the ACSG group for that information. Let's see. The other announcement there is feel free to reach out to Mrs. Marcus. She's, like I said, she runs the Hope Alive ministry, and there's also a discount with that. ACSG will cover 100% of the cost. So if you do need counseling services, now you understand what trauma is, you understand what their triggers are, and the counseling will help you know the answers. Do feel free to make an appointment. If you're a member of this group, the group will cover the cost of counseling for you. Okay. And our next meeting is September 12th. So that's just less than a month away. Yeah, it's a members only forum. This is the sessions that Mr. Vladimir was describing, where we just kind of look down, look in, and support each other. So that's on September 12th. And here's how to reach any one of us. If there's anyone you would like to reach out to, here's the names of the leadership team for ACSG. Feel free to call, email. We actually have a WhatsApp group too, right? There's always someone sharing something to encourage, lift up our spirits every day. So feel free to reach out, send an email, and one of us will be willing to support you. We've all been through the journey, and we're still going through it in many ways too. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us. And there's a general group. We have just like one like this in October. We don't yet have a date and time and topic, but just put that on your calendar. We'll send you information when we have things firmed up. And yes, a lot of what we do is supported by our members and also our donors and our partner organizations. So if you like what we're doing and you want to support it, feel free to support. There are a number of ways you can do that. There's an email address you can send your donations to, or you could go to that website, africancancer.ca, and you could send that in through PayPal, or you can send a check to that address below. So just, email is probably the easiest, and we can send you more information regarding however you would like to donate. Thank you in advance. And that is it for now. Mr. Oladele, can you please share closing remarks?
Okay, so what else do I need to say? I just want to say thank you so much to our presenters, and I don't know anybody in here today who would not have gotten one thing or the other. This is actually an eye-opener in so many ways. So many things that we take for granted, we didn't know. And the way we behave, that is actually as a result of what we've experienced long time ago. You see, I was just looking at myself as they were talking about it. You would think that, oh, well, no, you don't need mental health. You don't need all those information. Everybody needs it, really, because if anybody listens to this, you will know that everybody needs it. So I just want to say thank you so much. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring you back, because this information is not supposed to be for only 10, 11, 20, 12 people. No. I mean, our members alone are almost 20 or so. So whatever happens today that we don't have all of us in here. So we will look for a better opportunity where we have, more people to listen to this very wonderful information. It's very, very awesome. So I want to say thank you again for everything, and hopefully you will be able to answer us when we come knocking again, that we really need you to give us more information about this. So thank you, and thank you again to everybody else that have actually participated or visited. It's been a wonderful day, really. And until next time, I don't have anything more to say. So, Mrs. Williams.
Thank you very much. I hope you all learned a thing or two. I definitely did. A special thanks to our presenters. I know that it is not easy to pull things like this together. I know you do it for a living, but for every presentation is different. So you've invested your time to attend, to prepare. Someone says that for every minute of presentation, you need an hour of preparation. I know you're professionals, you can do this in your sleep, but I also know you've invested a lot in this. So thank you. Years of schooling, years of practice, and all the stories you've shared with us. We really appreciate it. And we can't thank you enough. Thank you, Ms. Nwoke, and thank you, Sister Inga-Marcus.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
You're welcome. So this is a question to Sayinka and Babayo. Folks are asking for the recording, right? I know there's a recording and the slides. So can I take it that we have the slides, we want to post it to our Facebook page, and we'll share with those who registered. Is that okay?
No, sorry, we need to confirm whether it's okay from the presenters, whether we can actually make public some of those things that you have. that we had today. So it's up to them because it's their propriety. So Mrs. Woke and Mrs. Marcos, are we able to put this thing on our website, or do you want to send us a copy that we can post?
Yinka, what do you think? Do we need to review it again before we send the final copy?
You're muted. Thank you.
You are
Yinka,
muted.
Sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that, that would be a good idea. But the thing is that this whole thing is recorded,
Yeah.
right? From